I'm not really in the mood to do this right now. But I guess that's how we know we need to do something, right? When God tells you to do something, you have to do what he says. He wants me to share my testimony. It's so spiritual warfare. I'm in no mood to do this, but I might as well do it. And since I can't record a whole lot of videos because I don't have enough space in my phone to do that, going live is about the next best thing. So my story starts in Norfolk, Nebraska. It's where I was born. And I think it was my grandma that told me the story about when I was a baby. My parents wanted to get me baptized. So they pushed me in a stroller to church one Sunday. The best place to start is from the beginning, right? Well, they pushed me to the church on a gravel road in a stroller. And then, and they got me there just in time. And they brought me up to the front of the church so the pastor could baptize me. And they handed him me. So the pastor goes to grab me, and I threw up all over him. And he went ahead and baptized me, and then he said, "But I just want to tell you guys, you're going to have trouble with this one." I think he was right. But I think the Lord uses our troubles to our benefit, right? So the other night at church, he put it on my heart to share a story. And that's what I'm going to get to next. I think I'm just going to share this bit by bit. I want to turn a light on. Hi, everybody. Well, it's not a very fun story, my life, you know. I don't remember a lot of it. The truth is, I was on drugs like all my teenage years. And then when I quit doing heavy drugs, I was still an alcoholic, big time. But I remember when I was 5, that's when my parents got divorced. I remember the day my mom said that she wanted a divorce. And we were walking up the front porch of our house in Alton, Iowa. We were carrying groceries, and my brothers made it in. And then she said, "That's it. I'm just done." And I said, "What?" She said, "I'm going to file for a divorce." And I remember dropping that bag of groceries that I was carrying. And that was the first time my heart just truly sunk. It hurt really bad. I got really scared for the first time. And then we didn't see Dad. And I want to say it was about 3 years. I don't know who's watching. I guess I don't really care. But then I'm 7, and we lived in Worthington, Minnesota. And my mom was an alcoholic. And lots of days I would come home from school and she would be sleeping. I remember stealing her food stamps to go buy candy. And I don't think she ever noticed. So I ended up, we were going to this Assemblies church, and my mom had stopped going. But our grandparents made sure that we would get there on, I don't know if it was Wednesday nights or what, but that's where I remember the pastor saying, if you've got hurt in your heart, if you've got pain in your life, and you don't know what to do about it, well, I know what you can do. He said, you can ask Jesus Christ to come live in your heart right now. I was only 7, and I remember thinking, I'm only 7. But I know what pain is. My life is pretty painful, and I am not happy. And I remember why I felt that way. It was because I don't know how many times in the middle of the night I would wake up and my mom wasn't home. And I remember how afraid I was waking up without a parent in the house. It was really scary. But what was worse was when I would wake up when she was home and she had brought someone home with her from the bar, and I would see what they were doing. Not good, it's not good for a little kid to have to see that. So I remember thinking about that in church, thinking, my life hurts. I haven't seen my dad in a long time. And I didn't like the way I felt. I felt very alone. I felt very afraid and very unhappy. And so that's what I did. I said, Jesus, I believe in you. I believe you died on the cross to save me, and I need your help. And I'll never forget that whoosh that I felt when he came in to my heart. It was the most beautiful feeling. The feeling of Jesus Christ living inside of me, Well, my grandpa then put a Keith Green tape in my little boombox. So I'm walking up and down the streets in Worthington, Minnesota with my boombox, listening to Keith Green music, just singing at the top of my lungs, He'll take care of the rest, just all kinds of good Christian songs. And I had Jesus in my heart, and all that pain that I had felt prior just left. I didn't feel it anymore. And then before I knew it, I was in an illegal immigrant's house one day, and he was a word that rhymes with grape, and I remember, oh God, I was just terrified. And when he penetrated me, it hurt really, really bad. And I wanted to scream, but I had the Holy Spirit inside of me. And he told me in the Spirit, don't scream. So I listened. And then I remember I really, really wanted to cry. And he said, don't cry. So I listened to the Holy Spirit, and I didn't scream and I didn't cry. And I stayed completely calm. And then the Holy Spirit just kind of took over my body for the first time. And I jumped up out from under the guy. His name was Fernando Cortez. And I said, oh, shit, my mom. And she's just, oh, crap. And I don't know. I just started freaking out about, oh, no, my mom, I'm supposed to be home. And I put my hand on that door handle, and me and him made eye contact. And that was my shot. So I took it, and I turned that knob, and I took off running down the steps as fast as I could. And I got out of there. And when I got home, I started telling my mom about what was happening. Mom, Fernando, remember you said one day somebody could, and that's what he was doing this, and she just wouldn't, it was like she wouldn't even hear me. She didn't want to know. So I took off running out the back door of my house. I ran around the block, and I stopped at a little church because I knew Jesus would help me. And thank you. So I sat on them church steps and I prayed, I really need your help. Please, please help me. And he said, go to your grandma and grandpa's house. So I ran to my grandma and grandpa's house. And this is all just such a long story. It's hard to, but then I did that, and they called the police and the social worker, and he ended up getting sentenced to 7 years. He only got convicted of molestation. It's outrageous. That's not the way it was meant to be, but that's what happened. And come to find out that he used to call into the radio stations from state to state, and he called into 95.1 in Worthington, Minnesota, when he met me, apparently, because he said the next one's going to be a little blonde-haired girl with blue eyes. And come to find out, they didn't find a lot of those little girls. So the point of that story is, when I got saved, I knew I needed Jesus, but I didn't know. I had no idea how bad I was going to need him. Something so similar happened. He really does. He really does. I know, right? Start Spinks. What's up? Yeah, I knew I needed him, but I had no idea how much I really, really was going to need him. And that's what he did. He saved my life. He literally saved my life. Because I'm sure a lot of them other little girls did scream and they did cry. And that was how inevitably they died, I don't know if something different happens between either getting saved or asking him to come and live in your heart, but something different happened with me. And I would never say I'm a prophet or anything like that, but prophecy is definitely one of my spiritual gifts. Because my life just kept getting worse and worse, and I ended up letting go, because the next thing that happened, 6 months to a year after that terrible day in Worthington, Minnesota, my mom's head split open in a car accident. I had so many attempts and was so little I could swear. What would we do without him? And all them other little kids that did end up passing away or do get graped and disappear, we just got to thank God for heaven, right? Yeah. So I was still praying. I was 7 when that happened. And then when I was 8, my mom had quit drinking thank you very much. It's not me. It ain't me, right? It's all him. It's all him. Thank you. You're a sweetheart. Thank you. So she hadn't drank in like 6 months, and life was going pretty good then, I remember that song, Back on My Feet Again, by Michael Bolton. This is 32 years ago now. She would listen to that song every day. And one night, I remember her friends called. They wanted her to go out drinking. And then, and she said no the first couple times, but then they showed up and there was some beers on the table. I remember me and my big brother dumping out beer time and time again. I don't know why we ever thought it would help, but it didn't, But anyway, that night she said, all right, fine. And she told her friends, okay, you guys. And she told us kids she was going to go out with her friends. She didn't say, I'm going to go out drinking with my friends. She said, we're going to go have a ladies' night. And I remember saying, wait, you don't understand. If you leave, you're not coming back. And everybody just looked at me like I was crazy. Yeah, they always have. But that was the first time. So it was so scary and it was so horrible. I did not want her to leave that night. I bawled and screamed and begged her not to go. But I couldn't stop her. And I remember, I'm 41 now, right? But I remember it like it was yesterday. She goes to the back door. She puts her coat on. And I'm still like, please, Mom, please don't leave. Please don't leave me. She said, I'm just going to be gone for a while, honey. I'll be here when you wake up in the morning. And I'm like, no, you won't. No, you won't. You don't understand. And I'll never forget that last hug, and I took a big old whiff of her coat and it smelled like cigarettes and navy perfume. It was that's a beautiful smell to me, and she said goodbye. And I was like, goodbye. Because I knew that was the last time. I hope what I'm saying is understandable. I'm understanding the translator. Mm-hmm. Right? No, I'm good. Don't worry. You're sweet. So I said goodbye. And we had a babysitter. And I just bawled and screamed for hours. And my brothers were like, yeah, stop. Okay. Like they always have, It was me and my two brothers. And finally, I remember crying myself to sleep. And then I woke up at 1:30. I sat up in my bed and I looked at the clock and it said 1:30. And I was so calm and content because I knew she was in heaven. I knew she had died and where she had gone. And I laid back down and went to sleep. The next time I woke up was the police were in my house and they were so nice. And they asked me if we had a phone book and if we had any family in town. And I was like, oh, yeah, my grandma and grandpa, they live right over there. And the cops were like, well, let's get the phone book. And I pointed them out and I'm like, yeah, there they are right there. I'm like back in my kid mind now. And I pointed out who my grandma and grandpa were. And they said, okay, honey, we got to go do some stuff. You just go back to bed, okay? I said, okay. And I went back to bed. And the next time I woke up, my grandpa was sitting at the foot of my bed with his head down. And I'm just back in my kid mind, That's something with prophecy. I don't know, like when the Holy Spirit can come over you and you're in the Spirit and you've got all this divine wisdom that's just so beautiful. And then in an instant, you can be back in your kid body and mind. And it's like you have no real understanding of anything. You're just a kid again. Because we got out to his truck, me and my little brother. And he couldn't, like, I'm like, well, are we going to go? It was like I had forgotten what I already knew the night before, And he said, you guys, your mom got into a car accident last night. It was really bad. And I'm like, well, what's wrong, Grumpy? Broken arm, broken leg, what? This is her dad talking, and put his head down for a minute. And then he said, you guys, it was a really bad accident. I'm like, okay. So when we got to their house, I remember walking up to the back door, and right before I opened the door, I saw my grandma sitting in a chair at the table, and she had just gone to pieces, She was in a bad way. And I remembered then. I'm like, okay. And then I had to watch my brothers hear about it for the first time. And everybody else, it was like they were hearing about it for the first time, but I'd already known. And I just didn't understand why nobody wanted to believe me. You know, I should say, this street that we lived on in Worthington, Minnesota, there was my house. And then Fernando ended up renting a house just kitty corner from us on this one-way street. So when I ran back home, and then out the back door, because she wouldn't listen to me, so I ran around the back of the block, and I stopped at this little church to pray. And right across, so that the church is on this side of the block, and I could see Fernando's house from right over there. But I was not afraid. I had Jesus inside of me. I wasn't one bit afraid. And I was sitting across from this Benson funeral home. And I remember knowing how significant thank you it was. But that was where they ended up having my mom's funeral. And that's the next little piece of my story. This used to just torment me for years and years. I caught on to the spirit of death at a young age. And I remember standing in front of my mom's casket, and my grandma was like going like this. Oh, sorry, I can't hardly prop it up. My grandma was like, whoops, fumbling through my mom's hair. And she goes, oh, like, she's got 2 different colors of blonde hair. And well, when you're a kid of 8 years old looking at a casket and a body in a casket, it's eye level, you know? So I wasn't looking at her hair. I was looking at the glue and the staples holding her head together. And talk about traumatized too, you know? I was like, it was bad. That was bad. And at one point, somebody said we should go up and say goodbye. And I don't know what my brothers put in there, but I think I wrote a little letter to put in the casket with her, you know. And then I made up my mind I was going to say goodbye to her. And I went to reach in to the casket, and I wanted to, you know how the hands are like this. And I wanted to hold her hand and say goodbye. And right about that time, I went into shock because it was cold and clammy, and my finger just stuck there on her hand, and I couldn't fathom why her eyes wouldn't open, and the way that they looked, and how swollen up her body was. And well, what happened was her head split open and her rib cage completely shattered, so she was like a blueberry underneath all that makeup. And like I'm saying, we hadn't seen my dad in 3 years at that point, so my fingers still stuck to her hand, and I'm just petrified. And I turn around to look and ask somebody to help. Please help me. I don't know what to do. And when I turned around, I saw this handsome man come in the back door, and I thought, wow, he's handsome. And then I thought, well, why would I think that man's handsome? I'm just a little girl. This does not make any sense. Why would a little girl think a grown man's handsome? And so I'm still stuck to her, you know, that's the spot. And I'm looking back and forth, and I said, wait, Mom? Trying to process my mom's dead body right in front of me, and the smell. Now I know it's decomposition powder because I studied mortuary science for 4 years, inevitably. And is that my dad? Yeah, that was my dad. I hadn't seen him in so long. It took me a little bit to put it together. No worries. Tears are healing sometimes, you know. And yeah, it was. my God. So then I eventually I was able to unattach my finger, and that spot right there where I had been touching underneath, it was just purple. This is one of those traumatic events that stuck with me for many, many years. Many, many years. And now I know it was the spirit of death, because I used to have nightmares of of my mom coming back, and there was like a second funeral. um and in that dream, for some reason, she would always try to kill me. And I'd be trying to go and say goodbye again, but then she would jump up and out of the casket and try to kill me. I don't think about it anymore at all, but I guess it's part of the story, so I'm just telling it. Hello, what's up? Hi guys. Yeah, it's kind of a long time ago, so I try not to think about it. But the whole point of my testimony is how many times I've let go, and God has always got his hand out, and he wants to hold us, but we're running away. Hold on, I just need this man. Hold on, I just need those drugs. Hold on, I just got to go here or get that money or whatever it is. And it's never going to help. It's not going to work, right? The only thing that works is when you let him hold you. So I did see an angel when I was maybe still 8. Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that an awful lot. Well, I put it on my heart, I have to share my testimony, so I'm just going to share some of it now and some of it later. Thank you for coming in. Right on. Yeah, we had a pretty rough childhood. I don't know if my brothers would say the same thing, but that night, man, I'm not sure how much of my childhood I want to tell, because I don't want to give away everybody or anything and make anybody look bad or irritate anybody, but before I get into that, I can tell this story about the angel. And so in my bedroom on the farm, it was a light blue color, but at nighttime it looked navy blue. And that's the color of the suit my mom was wearing in her casket. So I'm just laying there terrified, like all the time. And then I started having the visions. Now I know it was a demonic attack. There were several demonic attacks. The spirit of death came on me when I was 8, when I was standing there at my mom's casket. So me and my brothers were alone out on this farm, and my brothers didn't seem to, they're just boys, nothing seemed to hurt them or bother them, and plus they were closer to my dad, but he didn't live with us. He lived with his girlfriend and her kids, and it was just us out there. And I remember this one night in my bedroom, well, every night I would lay there just hoping that somebody would come, because I didn't want to be alone anymore, And when I saw the angel, I remember laying in bed, and then I saw I noticed there was a reflection off the glass. And I was started at first to get really excited, because I thought a car was coming down the road, and maybe they'd be coming to our house, because like I said, I didn't want to be alone. And but then when I looked out the window, there was no car on the road, and I realized it was a reflection from the other side of my bedroom. And so I stopped trying to look out the window, and I turned my head, and in the doorway of my bedroom, there was an angel just floating, just in glory, and it didn't have feet, and I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but I could definitely tell it was an angel. And it just glowed and illuminated this light, and it was just hovering, and it was so bright and beautiful. And I heard what I assumed was the voice of God, and he said, "She's okay. You're okay. Everything's going to be okay, Elaine. And that's that story. That was beautiful. I'm not sure how far I want to go into the details of my childhood because I really don't want to upset people. But long story short, within about a year after my mom died, I started wanting to kill myself. I saw that angel. It was beautiful. But over a short period of time, I was so just overwhelmed with not having a caregiver on the scene and nobody to love on me. I think about the most affection I ever got was one time I had a teacher that I don't know what she saw, but I was in 3rd grade, and she reached over and she put her hand on my shoulder and gave me a little pat. And that was, like love. Somebody did care enough to do that. And that meant a lot to me, and I'll never forget that, But without any supervision out on this farm outside of Paulina, Iowa, we just started partying hardy. It was pretty intense, man. Before I knew it, I remember playing a lot of quarters, and a lot of drinking games, and a lot of boys wanting to barrel into my bedroom at night to take advantage of me, and it didn't take me long to learn how to fight them off. I started sleeping with my clothes, and I learned how to go toe-to-toe with a dude a long time ago, and I've never lost a fight, ever. Well, once. But after that, you're never going to lose another one, What's next? Yeah, just a lot of partying. I soon became attracted to women myself, and it's not something I'm proud of now, not at all. Before I knew it, I felt like I was taking advantage of him. And when I was 21, he put it on my heart that I needed to stop. And I remember telling him, well, then you're going to have to help me. I'm talking about Christ, And he said, well, then you're going to have to quit drinking. And I said, well, then you're going to have to help me. So he did. That was one of the first times I quit drinking, when I was 21. Oh, the car accident, the out-of-body experience. Should I get into that? Does anybody want to hear about that? Because I died when I was 21. You guys want to hear about that? Can I get a yeah, please? Okay. Well, I as soon as I graduated high school, I found the most abusive man I possibly could, and I thought he was gonna take care of my life and just change everything, However that works, right? So that's what I did next. I went and started getting abused physically and mentally and sexually, and then I started deciding I was going to leave him. And I was with this man for 5 years, and every couple of years I would get up the strength to leave him. But every time I left him, we would do drugs together, and then he would get violent. But then when I would leave him, I would go somewhere else and do just a bunch more drugs, way more drugs than I needed, a lot of drugs. And I would drugs and drinking, and things would get even, I don't know, was it worse getting my butt kicked, or was it worse kicking my own butt with all these substances? So I ended up getting a job at a farrowing unit, managing the farrowing portion, the farrowing section. It was a farrow to, I don't remember, farrow to what. It wasn't a farrow to finish site. I think it was a farrowing through, I want to say the pigs would be about 6 months old, or months old when they would leave. Anyway, so when I moved on to this farrowing unit, I moved on to the house at the property, and it was a pretty good job, I had tried to quit doing meth. I did quit doing meth at this time, and I had a really good job. But before long, I'd gotten really lonely because I was far away from home, and I didn't have any friends out there. And I started drinking on the job, of course. I would drink sip some whiskey at work, and one night I called up a buddy and I said, that's it. I can't do it anymore. I need to get drunk. I need to get effing wasted. I mean it, So she was going to be my designated driver and come get me and take me to the bar that night. And all right, well, so she showed up and she gives me a ride to the bar, and I got hammered. It was a good time, whatever. I was a Jack drinker. And, man, right before we left the bar, in her car, I remember this other guy in his mid 30s or whatever. I was 21, and my designated driver was like 19 or whatever, so she wasn't even drinking. Oh, but I got hammered, and it was fine, Well, he left the bar, and then a couple minutes later, I said, all right, I'm ready to go home too. So we get in her car, and she started speeding, and she thought it would be funny because we caught up to the dude outside of town. This is in Lynn Grove, Iowa, and she thought it would be funny to pass him. So we did. And I remember I was already spinning pretty good, and I said to her, Brittany, there's a stop sign up there. Brittany, there's a stop sign up there. But she, I think she was just having too much fun, So she blew the stop sign going about 90. And it was the kind of stop sign that, you go straight, but you have to take a little left of a couple feet and then keep going, so it's like this. So she blew it going 90, and we kind of hopped over the intersection, and the car teetered a little bit, with maybe a foot into off the side of the road. And I remember the car was just kind of shaking, and it was that, oh shoot moment, but she got us back onto the road. And right about the moment we felt like we were safe, all of a sudden the car just jerked, and the ditch was so deep. It was such a big, deep ditch there outside of Lynn Grove. And we ended up going boom, boom, end over end twice, and then 4 times sideways out into the cornfield. And I remember when her head took out the mirror, and then it hit the windshield, and as it spider veined, I remember seeing the cornfield. I was wearing my seatbelt, but she wasn't. And when her head took out that mirror, it hit the windshield, and I thought, she's dead, because I watched the blood just go through all those spider veins in the windshield. And it was Don't Matter by Akon, nobody want to see us together, but it don't matter, no. It played 4 out of 6 rolls. I remember it like it was just yesterday, They say that they told me at one point that my seatbelt saved my life, but I broke every bone in the path of that seatbelt. I broke all my ribs on my right side and my shoulder, and I had multiple lacerations to my internal and external liver, and I had kidney failure. And the car landed upright. I remember throughout this accident, she just flew all over in that car. She kicked me in the head at one point, and I remember thinking, well, I don't blame her. Because we were rolling, and there was no stopping, she didn't have any control. But when we landed, I thought she was dead, because she was laying basically in the back seat with a leg on my lap, and I could not breathe. Now I know it was because I had a collapsed lung. And all of a sudden she goes, oh, Elaine, oh man. And she couldn't get her door open. So she like flew up out over the adrenalinism. I'm trying not to swear. So she like flew up over the car and she couldn't get my door open, but the windows had all shattered. She reached in and she tried to grab me by my arm, and we heard the crack from my arm and or my shoulder, and then that guy that we had passed had apparently stopped on the road, and he comes running out into, I don't know how to do this without, you can swear on YouTube, right? You can totally swear on YouTube, right? Like, he goes, "Don't fucking touch her, she's fucked up." And I thought, well, maybe I am, because I couldn't breathe and I couldn't talk and I couldn't move. And he helped her, and they got me unbuckled, and they got me out of the car, and kind of carried me up and set me in his truck. He said, "I called the ambulance. They're on their way." And then when the ambulance came from Spencer, Iowa, they got me into the ambulance. And I don't know how to explain this but now this is my out of body experience. Okay. So there was 2 beds in the ambulance. Thank you, Olivia. And I was in the bed up here behind the driver's seat, and Brittany was in the other bed over here down a little, like towards the middle of that side of the ambulance. So I was up here, and there was a lady towards the back door of the ambulance. She was asking me all these ridiculous questions, and I just wanted to tell her to shut up, because it was really annoying, and I couldn't breathe and I couldn't think, and I was not in the mood to answer questions. Not to mention I was still drunk, right? So I wasn't in a very good mood either. But shock, man, I remember sitting in his truck before the ambulance came, and the feeling of shock. It's a really good feeling, being in shock, because it does mask all those broken bones and everything. And she wouldn't stop asking them questions. And then about that time, I just floated up out of my body. I remember how much pain I was in while she was asking me them questions, and I was still in my body. You guys, you know how much it hurts just to breathe, right? Just being a human. You know how it hurts, like the pain, because your elbows are dry, your skin is dry. Just like right now, my hip bones kind of hurt because I'm just sitting here. There's a lot of pain that we have just from being human, without any complications, right? But okay, so now I'm not in my body anymore. And I remember looking down at it, just thinking, ugh. And it was 21 years old, man. It was smoking. It was rock solid, this body back then. And I remember wondering, how can I see through the roof of the ambulance? How is this happening? If the ambulance is flying down the highway to get me to the helicopter, I didn't know it at the time, but that's what it was doing. It was trying to get me to the chopper pad to life flight me, because I was dying. And then I did die. So I floated up out of my body, and I couldn't get over how does this work? Now I know I was in another dimension. The ambulance was flying down the highway, but it was like time stood still, and I could see through the roof of the ambulance. And that woman started running kind of frantically or whatever. I don't know what was going on. But what I did know was my mom was in heaven, and I was on my way. So I'm like flying through space. I'm going up. I knew exactly where I was headed. That's where I was going. I was going up to heaven to be with my mom. I did not get to see a light. I didn't get to see anything. But I feel like I got about 80 feet up into the air above the ambulance anyway. And then all of a sudden, he, being my savior, must have stuck his hand out like to just stop me and kind of pull me back down. And there we were in midair, in space, in this other dimension. Well, the more I watch out of my body experience stories, I know it was the second heaven. And I didn't get to see him. I didn't get to see anything except like space, and I could see down into that ambulance. But when I remember shortly before I started to really ascend, I went to go, yay. But then I thought, what the heck? Because I'm going like this, but I didn't have, and that was when I looked down at that body down there, and I just thought, ugh, and then I realized I'm still me. I'm still exactly who I was. I don't have my body anymore. And I thought this body just looked so disgusting down there, and I didn't want anything to do with it. And I get a kick out of that because now I'm 41, but back then I was 21. So it was not ugly at that time. It was perfect. I had all my teeth. Everything was right where it was supposed to be. It was perfect. So right about the time I felt him kind of grab me and just gently as pulling me back down, my heart started to sink because I wanted to go to heaven. I wanted to be with my mom. And there was a complete separation that happens when you die. And that's exactly what happened. I completely forgot about everybody else that was down here on earth. My whole family, all my friends, they were gone to me. There was just a complete separation. So he pulls me back down and sort of stopped me there in midair, and my heart had sunk. I would have put my head down if I had my head, but I was just a spirit. So then he said, no, Elaine, not yet. I have more work for you to do. And when he said work, he put his hand on my shoulder. And I don't want to sound too graphic. I don't want to sound too graphic at all, but I've done in my day, right? It'll be 18 years, July 23rd, since I quit doing meth. But I have done a lot of drugs in my day back when I was young. And the feeling that I felt when he touched me, you could take all the, let's just say, romantic experiences I've ever had, all the hugs, all the times, if he really truly loves you and he puts his arms around you and holds you at night, you could take all the love from my family and friends over the years and you could put them all together, and it wouldn't amount in any way to the amount of love I felt when he touched me. I sure am. I'm incredible now. And when he said work, and what kind of work? Well, now I know exactly what he meant. Now he wants me to talk about the rapture and the tribulation and what happens if you don't get to go up in the rapture, But then I looked back down, and that woman that had been asking me them stinking questions was straddling my body now. And she was on top of me. And so this is my head. And she was going, come back, Elaine, come back. And just back and out of me. And then all of a sudden I opened my eyes because my head. And I said, I couldn't talk, but I was trying, and I was trying to say, I'm back. And then I was in and out several times. And then I woke up in ICU, and my little brother was sitting next to me, and he must have been crying because the thing I remember when I woke up, the first thing I felt was this puddle of ish, uck, which in my human form, that's the most precious thing there could ever be, is your little brother sitting there next to your hospital bed crying, and I felt his tears in a puddle, and I was just disgusted. I saw my whole family, all my grandparents and my dad and my brothers, and they were all so happy when I woke up, and I did not want to come back. No. And the thing that I wondered about for a lot of years is if I was drunk when I got into that car accident, I got to meet my maker, and he assured me that I'm going to go to heaven, but not yet. So it kind of means a lot. How could he know that? How could he know all that, right? But he did. And then I spent a lot of years wondering, well, what's this work you want me to do? And I prayed about it because I really tried hard to bring people to Christ, and they don't want to hear it. I know how they feel. I felt the same way. Well, even after that car accident, I went a lot of years. I just kept on drinking and doing drugs, and I did everything I could to fill the hole that I had in my heart after my mom died. And I didn't even get to feel any kind of a replacement for that until I had my son. And he fills that hole in my heart, So thank God for that. I'm not sure if I should go on or not, I think that's enough for one day. Yeah. All right. So I came back and I had to learn how to walk all over again, and that was not fun. And I started to get kind of mean and spitting on nurses and, well, the catheter, that's not fun. Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's enough for now. I'll get to pick up at some point. But it's all about the Lord. It's all about Jesus. And I know why he sent me back. It's the time we're living in. I hope everyone knows where we're at. You guys know where we're at? We're at the end of the church age. We're somewhere between like the 4th and 15th revelation in the Bible. We're living in the last of the last of the last days. So time's really running out. And we have to focus on him and our salvation. All right. Thank you for coming in, okay? As usually, I love everyone. Think differently. I don't even know how to end this. Take me a minute, right?